So I just learned something really weird about Washington State, the state in which I live, that I did not know until, you know, I learned it, just recently. And that thing that I learned is there is a little teeny tiny piece of Washington State that in order to get to it, you have to go up through Canada and all the way around and down to drop back into US territory. And the reason I know this is because there was a guy in my shop that was ordering, a bunch of like loaves of soap. And he mentioned this place in which he lives, Saint something. I don't remember. But he mentioned that he was down from there and he likes to stock up in bulk whenever he can. And so then I didn't really understand it. I thought maybe he was down from Canada. And then it still wouldn't have made sense to me because the border's still closed, to my knowledge, right? And so then as I was ringing him up and getting his address to ship the soaps, he gives a Washington State address. And I'm like, wait, how did you get here? How awful has the last year and a half been? Like, that's wild to me that, like, I'm an American citizen and I can't get to America. That's cuckoo bananas. And I had no idea that just this little town of like 1,000 people exists as the United States. But I mean, you can go by boat, but really by the land, the only way you can get there is through Canada and back down. That has nothing whatsoever to do with, the poor and what we're talking about and all the things today. But, hi, welcome to my brain. And this is what I was thinking about at this exact moment. I will tell you what we are doing today in just a minute. But before I do, hello, I am Mrs. Soap and Clay. Let's make stuff. How's it going, Sudsers? Welcome back to the channel. You're at Soap and Clay, where we make all the soapy things. And you are here for day 92 of 365 days of soap. And today we're doing a back to basics day type thing. And we are answering some questions about resizing soap batches. Now, I have given you guys a ton of recipes in a variety of different ways. I prefer to do recipes in percentages, so you can actually scale your recipe to meet your mold size. But what happens when I give you a recipe that is smaller or bigger than what you want to make? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. And we are going to be making one of my favorite bars and one of the best sellers for the past several years, soap, the Tyler Durden, while we talk about it. Okay, we are going to talk about resizing soap batches today while making the Tyler Durden, because the Tyler Durden is awesome and it needed to be made, so bonus. But we are going to do some weird things in addition to this because, I want to. And so we're going to do some overlays with really the formulations and the calculations and all the jazz. So first things first, when you are figuring out how much soap you're going to need to fill your mold, is to determine how much soap your mold, whatever that mold may be, will hold. And so the way you do that is you take the size of your mold, length times width times height, and that will give you the total volume of your mold. So we're going to give an example, right? And again, the formula is length times width times height to give you the total volume of your mold. And so in this example, we have a mold that is 12 inches long and 2.75 inches wide and 3 inches tall. So you take 12 times 2.75 times 3. And you can just, if you have a watch or a phone, you can just tell Siri to do that thing and she'll do it for you. You don't even have to pull out your calculator because you just have one of those guys now. And that's literally what I'm doing at this exact moment. And the total volume of the mold is 99 ounces. Okay. And that's fine. So that's how much it will hold. But you need to determine the amount of oils that you need to fill this mold. So what we're going to do here, the formula is that total volume, so in this case 99, times 0.4 to give you the total oils, the total oil weight that you would need to fill this mold. And in this case, it is, again, you can just ask Siri. We have one of those, or, whatever the Google one's name is, or even Alexa, you could ask her too. Anyway, total oils needed to fill the mold, 39.6 ounces. Okay, so that is where we go. So now that we have the total oil weight to fill whatever mold we want to fill, well, what's next? Well, in situations wherein I have given you a recipe that has, coconut oil, olive oil, palm oil, whatever, you could then calculate the percentages based on that. So if I give you a recipe that has 12 ounces of coconut oil in a 38 ounce total oil weight batch, you would take 12 ounces divided by 38, and that would give you 0.31, so 0.32, which would mean 32% of the batch is coconut oil. And then you would do that for all of the oils that were in the batch to determine what the percentages are. And again, I usually give them to you in percentages and an actual recipe, so you could just go off of my percentages. But in case that doesn't happen in a recipe, find your percentages and then we can resize the batch. Okay, so once you have figured out the percentages of all of your oils, and you figured out how much oil you need for whatever your mold size is, you can work a number of different ways. Now that we have the percentages for the oils, you can plug them in to multiple calculators. In this instance, we are going to work off a really easy recipe. So we're going to do just the basic 3: olive at 34%, coconut at 33%, palm at 33%. Okay? So then you are going to multiply that 39.6 ounces by each of those percentages. So 39.6 times 34%, right? And that is going to give you some kind of thing. And then you're going to take 39.6 times 33%, and it's going to give you some kind of thing. And that some kind of thing is the amount of oils in ounces that you're going to need for each of those oils. So it looks like olive is going to come in at 13.5, and coconut and palm are going to come in at 13.1. And then I like to go ahead and double check with all of that because, whatever. The whole measure twice, cut once, same thing. So then I would go ahead and just add those up just to double check and make sure that it still hits the oil weight that you're going to need to fill your mold, right? And that comes up at 39.7. So we are cooking with gas now. That's great. That's awesome. We know that that's going to work. Now we're going to have to figure out how to formulate your lye. Now, there are actually a number of different ways that you can calculate how much lye you're going to need. Uh, and you can do it, by hand. And I actually do require that in my master soap making classes, that everybody learns how to calculate their lye solution by hand with the saponification values of each oil and then adding that all up. But also, you're not in my master class. And you have the internet at your disposal. And so there are a number of different calculators on the interwebs that will, essentially do all this for you once you have a couple pieces of information. And the only real big piece of information you actually need is, how much oil. And so we're going to look at a couple different options for calculating first we're going to go with another way to calculate how much oil you need. And we're going to do so over at Wholesale Supplies Plus. And so if you have the percentages, if you've already figured out what the percentages are for everything, you can just start plugging them in to Wholesale Supplies Plus's calculator, and just as as you need to. And so in this particular thing, it's 16 ounces of the total batch volume, and it gives you the amount of, that's actually a little bit confusing. The total batch volume suggests that it's oil and lye and water together, but really it's going by weight. And so just to double check our maths and see, and there you go. Those are what we need for coconut, olive, and palm in the percentages that we're messing around with. But you can easily adjust your batch and get the amount of oils that you're going to need for your recipe based on the size of your mold here at Wholesale Supplies Plus. The only real problem I have with that, obviously, is that there's no lye calculator on this one, and that's kind of annoying. So I do prefer to use a couple other tools on the interwebs, and we'll go play around with those now, because I think it's easier just to do all that in one place. And there are plenty of calculators on the interwebs that allow you to do so. And so we're going to go play around with those, and you can see how easy peasy lemon squeezy it is to resize your batch using a full calculator. Okay, on to the cut and on to some, I think, better calculators that exist on the interwebs. People have always, been intimidated by soapcalc.net, and I don't really think you should, because while there are a lot of tools that you can use at soapcalc.net, you don't really have to. You can just stick with their automatic settings for your water as percentage of oils and the super fat and the fragrance load and all that jazz, and you would still end up with a very good bar of soap. But the point is, with this, you can also easily resize once you know your percentages of your oils. And so let's say I want to go to a 16 ounce by weight of oils. First, let's plug in the 39.6, sure, or 7 rather, and let's view that recipe. And 13.1 for coconut, 13.5 for olive, 13.1 for palm, but it also gives you your lye, 5.78, and your water, 15.09. So yes, there you go. That's how much lye and water you're going to need. And as we have talked about before, water is super arbitrary in soap recipes, so that's more of a guideline. You can do different things with your water for sure. So now let's see how easy it is just to resize this just by plugging in the new weight of oils that you're going to want to fill a smaller mold. Let's say that we have just like a 1 pound mold that we want to fill. Well, look at that. It figures out not only your new ounces for your oils, but also your lye solution and your water solution. And that's great. I really think you guys should be working with that, because it's a very, very easy way to do so. But you can also go to Brambleberry and their lye calculator. Now, their lye calculator is, I think, very, very user-friendly, and it cuts out a lot of the information that you don't necessarily need to know, especially when you're starting out. And so it's going to be as simple as just selecting your type of soap, solid, we're going to go by percentages of oil, and then, you know, a 5% super fat, because that's what was used for the soap calc. And so we're doing percentages: 33% coconut oil, 34% olive oil, 33% palm, and then it will formulate your recipe. And it even gives you a little thing down there. Soap calc does that too. But anyway, then it tells you how much lye, how much liquid, all the jazz, and all of the oil amounts that you're going to need to fill your batch. But also, you can resize the batch if you want to make this in a different sized mold for whatever reason. You just put in the new oil weight based on what we just talked about, like length times width times height of your mold times 0.4. That'll give you how much oil weight. And then you plug in that new oil weight, and you just continue, and it adjusts right there. There's no extra steps. You don't even have to click an extra button and pull up a new screen like you do with soap calc. You just have the information there. Now, obviously with soap calc, it breaks down all of the different fatty acid profiles and all that jazz, but I find those to be mostly not needed and whatever, so it doesn't super matter. But again, this is very, very simple doing it this way, and it all starts out with, well, what is the size of your mold? Length times width times height times 0.4 will tell you how much oil you need to fill that mold. And then you just figure out your percentages from there and plug them into a soap calc to get your total oils, all of the oils that you're going to need, and what those measurements are, as well as your lye solution and your water solution to resize your batch. This is a very, very easy way to do this. And also, this is why I tend to give you recipes based on percentages, so you can scale any recipe that I give to your mold needs, to your batch size needs, without having to go through the extra step of figuring out, you know, what those percentages are in order to, you know, continue on and plug them in. So there's that. Mold sizing, batch sizing, all the jazz. Pretty fun, pretty easy, not a whole lot of maths involved, and, you know, Siri can do most of it. That is day 92. And there it is, all things batch size, mold size, size, how to scale to your mold, how to scale your batch if you're putting in embeds, what that all looks like. Yeah, that for sure. Hope you guys learned some cool stuff, and you now have some more knowledge in your soapy repertoire that you can take with you and continue having fun and being awesome and all the things. Speaking of molds, we will actually be doing a mold exclusive video in the next week or so, wherein we are making a mold and giving you dimensions and step by step so you can make one too. So look forward to that. If you are interested in, you know, not forgetting about that, you could subscribe. Cool. For those of you who are subscribed, hey, thank you for subscribing and for being my sudsers and for being here with me all the time, even though I say weird things about Washington State and random factoids of information that probably not a lot of people care about, but I found it interesting. So there's that. I am out of here for today. I will see you guys all again tomorrow for another round of soapy fun. Bye.